let's move on to some other very important matters that have come up in the course of the week that we need to look at. Now, you would have heard the Senior Minister, Osafo Marfo, say that government contracts that were entered into in the dying days of the Mahama administration were
dying or
last days were being vetted or audited for obvious purposes, and though they were being careful about them so that they don't incur what you call judgment debts. He said the Attorney General, we understand, Gloria Akufo, had also actually said that the Administrator General's excuses for the transition matters were not correct because he sat down and allowed a lot of things to go bad. Now, government has been ostensibly hamstrung by some last-minute contracts signed by the Mahama administration. Osafo Marfo said, he said the Mahama administration came under intense criticism for what was described as midnight decisions to contract and recruit for and on behalf of the country within the last 2 weeks of its lifespan. And Osafo Marfo, speaking at the IEA's program, said that the Attorney General's office was in the process of reviewing all last-minute contracts of the previous administration in a process he described as, quote, a complete waste of effort and man-hours. I quote this last quotation from him. He says, one of the problems we are facing as a new government are the many contracts which are signed within the last 14 days, and not only within the center, but in institutions like Cocoa Board. And if you don't take care, you will run the country into all kinds of judgment debts because these agreements have also been signed and maybe are legally binding. Yes, Mike. So, what is informing this particular project?
I mean, Samson, as a lawyer, if a contract has been signed and for various reasons, a new person looks at it, can the contract be cancelled? Is this something you have not heard of before? So I'm very surprised that anyone would say maybe, and yet the press would make it look as if we are saying that a contract will be cancelled. The contract may be cancelled because we feel that some of them were done hurriedly, some of them were done because of chronism, some of them were done for the wrong reasons. We know fraud, for example, vitiates everything. So if we realize that there's an element of fraud in there, so these are the various things we'll review. And of course, if they are to stand, then they will stand. If they are to fall, then they'll fall. This is all I have to say on this particular matter because we don't want to politicize it. We just want to review the contracts for the benefit of Ghana. And we feel that some of the contracts in this regard, this is how they were handled. Remember the information bill. We had a chat with the NDC and we said, look, there were about 16 points that needed to be looked at. Why are we rushing to pass it in these last few days? Let us rather finish those points. Then we pass it to the benefit of Ghana. It's the same theory we are applying to these issue of contracts. That is all.
But some would have wished that you already know something is wrong somewhere, so you don't go into a fishing expedition.
We see, this is the issue. To do
you
that
have a suspicion.
will be presumptuous, and we don't want to be presumptuous. That's why we are saying we are going to review. This is the word. We are going to review. Then after review, obviously, there will be a report as to those that we think should stand and those that shouldn't. Then we'll take the necessary steps, either to even renegotiate some of the contracts, is what may arise, or to cancel them totally if that is a way forward, or to leave them as it is if it is for the benefit of government. Some of the things we'll look at, of course, will be value for money. We'll make certain comparative analysis. We'll do all the SGS checks and compare it and say, look, businessman, come here. This is not good. We'll use this and this law to cancel it if this was not done, or this is done. So this is what we are talking about. It is nothing that is malicious or anything that is meant to apply duress on anyone.
And about the vehicles too, the government has announced that it has been able to receive or recover 707, right? State vehicles from the former National Democratic Congress government. Sorry, I'm using the wrong figure here.
Don't worry.
You know, they say they are unable still to account or locate 234. 234. What are you able to say? What exactly is the process that is ongoing for these vehicles, and why are we unable to locate some of the vehicles?
You see, with the vehicles, if this vehicle is import, 4-wheel drive, allocated to Ministry of Environment and Science, allocated to the Minister, Honorable Mahama Yariga. So as soon as the day comes, we have the number plate, we have the chassis, we go to the ministry. Has he left the car? If he hasn't, we go to his house. Very simple to find. So he has returned his car. There's no problem. The problem is the protocol cars, where it is in a pool of the protocol, and the person who is using it is not, you can't tell who in particular, because it's protocol car. It's assigned to protocol. Somebody has taken the car, but it has not been logged who took the car that very day. Those are some of the cars which we can't find. But this is not a problem. As you can see in the story,
so all the 67,
yes.
How did government get them back?
Oh, I don't. You know, with some of these, when we put out even the information that, look, we're looking for the cars and so on, some of them even brought them voluntarily.
Okay.
You see, some of the people, they are not necessarily taking the cars. Some maybe has traveled and he's not been able to return the car yet. So they brought it. There's more of a delay in some cases. Some of them, the reasons which they've not been able to bring the cars yet, we don't know. But we are investigating still.
Are there no protocols governing government
properties
and
you see, and this
when
is
you
where,
should return
and
them
this is
and
where you
when
can't blame us. I mean, we were not in power. The car has been brought, is in a protocol pool, is being allocated to a particular area, but it is not traceable individually. So it has become what we call for the common people, but we can't find the specific person who has the car.
Okay.
So we know that it's in pool A, but yet when we went to pool A, the car isn't there. So now we are trying to trace who took the car from pool A. And it will take a while. As I said, the government has just been in power for only 60 days. If we put out an invitation to bring the cars, and only 67 has been recovered, then we have to forcibly go out and investigate. We all know some of the things that you can use to trace such a thing. Chassis numbers, all of that. But some of those things too, they can be changed, especially if the person has a kind of mind to keep those cars. So that is a process that's ongoing for us to retrieve the cars.
In the retrieval process, are there any people who were arrested and, for example, being given to police to prosecute them for having stolen the vehicles?
In fact, this is a very good question. And if I remember what was said by the person in charge of that, Mr. Senior Counsel Ayikoi Otoo, this is information that will be coming out in the next few days. But you see, one thing also doesn't aid an investigation is putting out in public the modus operandi for recovering such things on the quiet and in ways which surprised the person. Because you know the element of surprise is sometimes very important in issues of criminality. So if you go and put out, I don't know how my brother is finding this very funny. As a lawyer,
he will have his takes shortly.
Yes,
so
he should understand that one of the worst things you can do is to put out how you apprehend somebody who has taken state property, and you bring out that in the newspaper. So the next person would know how to avoid it.
It will take cover.
Exactly.
All right.
So that is why we are working on it rather than talking.
What do you say about the auditing of contracts and also the missing vehicles? Of course, during the last days of the government, everybody was warning it against these last-minute, jobs, and it couldn't be bothered because it was not doing anything constitutionally wrong. It was appointing charge bosses, appointing auditor generals,
Let me start from the last issue on why I was laughing. You know, I remember as a child, our teacher used to tell us that if you lie in the morning, in the afternoon when they catch you, you have to tell another lie to cover the morning lie. And in the evening when you are caught, you have to tell another lie to cover the afternoon lie. So I was laughing because all these things about cars, right from the beginning, it's been lies. Absolute lies.
What's lies about it?
The lie about people have stolen cars, they can't find cars, and etc. Absolute lies. Let me tell you how the system works. You have sector ministries, you have agencies, then you have the office of the president, which also has the national security, under them. Now, vehicles procured by the ministries are listed as ministry property. Vehicles procured by agencies like, let's say, Minerals Commission buy their vehicles, some agency buy their vehicles. They also have a list of their vehicles. You remember that we're supposed to give comprehensive report for every sector. And in that report, you also indicate the assets of the sector. Every sector brought a list of their vehicles, those that four wheels, saloon, everything. So if you go there with the Administrator General, so that information is there. Now, he's reducing it to protocol vehicles. That is the Flagstaff House, Office of the President. And usually also that one, because national security is attached to it, you don't have very clear numbering of the vehicles. So you can see a vehicle with number XYZ today on an Office of President vehicle. Tomorrow the same vehicle, for operational reasons, they'll remove that number plate. Then they'll put another number plate. But they know their vehicles because the national security is very involved in that exercise. And for operational reasons, that's how they operate. I know that as a minister, I'm allocated a vehicle, go for it, then I go and they say, oh, no, I gotta wait. Then they change the number and give you, and so these numbers are operational.
That should not lead to a shortage of vehicles. If the number is this number, then they should come and meet that number.
Yes, let me finish. So, as for the numbers, they are there. And as for the vehicles, they were handed in before everybody left. Now, there's something that we need to be frank about. And I don't like it because our own colleagues sometimes haven't been open and frank about this matter, and that has encouraged this debate to continue. I was a member of the transition team. At the transition team meeting, there was an agreement that certain type of vehicles, saloon cars, used by ministers, chief executives, and etc. Because unlike members of parliament, where you are given money, you buy your vehicle, ministers are not given money to buy vehicles. You come, you are given a vehicle to use, you are given a four-wheel to use. When you are leaving, you leave everything. At the transition meeting, there was an understanding that, okay, for saloon cars of a certain category, we will allow ministers to purchase their saloon cars. Those ones, the records are also there. If you disapprove of it, ask them to bring the vehicles back and give them back their money. And it's not difficult. Go to
cars that cannot be found.
Listen. No, I can vouch that nobody was sold a 4x4 vehicle. Nobody was sold a 4x4 vehicle.
Never said anybody hasn't sold a 4x4.
Yes,
it's missing.
Listen,
we don't know where the car is.
Look, my argument is that when you lie in the morning, you are caught in the afternoon.
You think it's a lie, but it's not a lie.
You are caught in the evening. You have to lie to cover the afternoon lie.
To a liar.
Listen carefully. I am saying that the vehicles must be there.
No, but why would they be lying about the non-existence of a vehicle which is already in there?
Because right from the beginning,
what's the purpose?
Right from the beginning, they had created an impression that in leaving we had looted, we had stolen all the vehicles. They've gone there, they've checked their records. They've seen that is not the case. Please, now the public is asking, you said they stole vehicles. Can we have the records? Can we have the information about how many vehicles were stolen? So you're having a difficulty. How do you explain this thing? Because you cannot come out and give the exiting government a very clean bill that, oh yes, they never stole any vehicles.
You realize there have been
few
contradictions from yourselves.
Yes.
Where the Deputy Chief of Staff, former, shows a document which gives a list of vehicles at a certain number, and then you have another number being bandied about by your own people.
But whose own people? I'm saying that the records are there. Those in government now today.
And the records show
listen,
these cars are missing.
those in government today
What
will know which vehicles. And if you can't find a vehicle, it's also not the case that you can't find who was responsible for the vehicle. You should be able to. Let me give you an example. I got a call from my former Ministry of Education. Oh, Ayika, there's a Land Cruiser that you need to account for. I said, me, account for a Land Cruiser. For what purpose?
But you are not the example.
Let me give you the example. Let me give you this example. No, this is very important. I said, which Land Cruiser? Oh, in 2013 or 2014. And do you remember what that Land Cruiser was about? If you recall, I had a near fatal accident. Could you remember? In the northern region, where I nearly lost my life, and I was sent to the hospital, and I was hospitalized for several weeks. A major surgery was performed on me. It was public knowledge. Everybody knew about it. The Land Cruiser was totally damaged. Right. It was towed to a police station near where the accident occurred. Today, I get the transport officer of the Ministry of Education calling me to ask me about that Land Cruiser. I said, I should be suing government because that vehicle was not insured. And all the damages I suffered, nothing. So today you are calling me to ask me about that Land Cruiser. You as transport officer, you assigned the driver, you gave the vehicle, and when I was at the hospital, you didn't take care to recover whatever remains of the vehicle so that you can account for it.
Keep the records.
Today you are calling me. Today you are calling me and asking me about that vehicle. So if you go and put that as
it's an
vehicle,
audit. So you just give them the information and they will tell you.
When you recovered, you didn't feel any responsibility to ensure that there is a trace of the vehicle.
There is a transport officer at the ministry. That's his job.
But you must report it to him for him to document.
Sorry, please.
He didn't get the report that I was involved in an accident. He didn't get the report that I was hospitalized in the hospital. What are you talking about? No, you see, what I'm saying is some basic due diligence can provide you with the information. So I said that, but have you forgotten that I was involved in an accident and you were responsible?
But is it fair for you to expect them to rely on public information, in the news about your accident, without you officializing the processes personally when you return?
What are you talking about? I officializing what processes? They came to the scene of the accident. They went and towed the vehicle to the police station.
Okay.
They must have the record. No, I'm giving you an example of the kind of things that happen. Okay? And I don't know how many other accidents occurred and what happened to those vehicles.
Okay.
So today, when you go and then create the impression that people stole vehicles, I'm saying, no, do some basic due diligence.
Did anybody say stole?
And you will find why. If can
you move on to the auditing? Auditing by the Attorney General of contracts, last minute contracts.
No. The Attorney General can audit any contract. It's her right as Attorney General. It's the right of government to go and audit any contract to satisfy themselves that the contracts complied with the processes. If they do find that the contract did not comply with the processes, and they still are minded, given what is involved, to keep it, they can keep it. If they decide that as a government, once it didn't comply, they don't want to take any corrective measures, they want to abrogate it, they can abrogate it. The party entering into a contract with government must also make sure that in doing so, they are also complying with the legal regime. That's why you must have your own lawyers. Okay. You can't come and say, oh, because I was entering into a contract, I didn't know that the agency that was awarding me the contract was violating the procurement rules and etc. No, you can't plead that. Okay. So I think that the issue of auditing contracts should not even be an issue at all. Government has a right to do that. Attorney General can do it and satisfy themselves that it is right or wrong. And I won't fight that. I won't even waste my time on a matter like that. The issue of appointments that were made I mean, those ones you check the processes. If the processes were respected, and I insisted at that time that President Mahama had a right until the midnight of the 6th of January, he could, exercise his powers as president. The issue was that they said we should have consulted them in some of the appointments.
Okay.
I said, well, consult, not consult. As today we are discussing certain issues and asking ourselves, strictly speaking, have you complied with the law? You've complied with the law? Fine. If you can reverse that appointment, see if the law permits you to do that, reverse it. If the law doesn't permit you to reverse that appointment, that's the benefit of operating under the rule of law, under the constitutional arrangement.
Thank
so
you.
I don't have an issue with the government can audit anything.
Thank you, thank you. Let's hear from Doc.
A number of things. First of all, I think if you're looking at the last minute decisions that an outgoing president makes, I think if elections are over, you're exiting, especially if you were not re-elected, or even if you are entering retirement after 2 terms and so on, I think we should find a way. These are transitional issues because it tends to convey a certain negative sense. You're leaving, you're making a decision that is going to be binding on somebody for 8 years and more.
They tell you government is a continuum.
Government is a continuum, but these are important matters as to who you work with and who you want to change. And so, and some are fixed. You can change it. I think the transition law ought to be looked at, and some of these experiences we've had ought to be reflected, that there has to be some constraints, okay, so that the goodwill and the morality of decisions are upheld. Yes, the law will be perfectly fine, but it doesn't make sense that it's a good thing to do in a given time, and so on. So I think we should look at that. With the issue
almost of like what we are hearing the MPP say now, that the president has not broken any law.
Well, that's it.
The NDC was telling all of us that the president has not broken any law.
The interesting thing is that the very people who would look at not just the law in its sense, but in its spirit, in its word and spirit, and tell you the morality of it. When they are in office, they would tell you no court can do this, or I haven't broken the law. And so the law can be used for almost everything. And most of the time, they are used for things that make us uncomfortable, given the context and so on. So I think that the transition law ought to look at, and it applies to the missing vehicles too.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know whether they are missing, but they are alleged missing. Let me call it. I don't want to get into the political debate. If the office, the Administrator General's office, had been fully equipped and is part of the public service we're talking about, and they have to take care of transition, properties being handed over, including vehicles, assets of the state, bungalows, even handing over notes and so on. This office was not equipped to do its work. We heard the Administrator General complaining that I don't have vehicles, I don't have money, and so on and so forth. But in the scheme of things now, given what we are discussing, it is the most important machinery that should have been sufficiently equipped to work independently and so on. So I think we ought to look at this issue, because those who can keep the records and good records of all properties of government are civil servants, not politicians. Why is that function not being performed? What are the issues? I think we should look into some of these matters and address them accordingly. Now, there is also the fiscal responsibility. You see, some countries have fiscal responsibility law, even the more advanced bureaucracies, because of this whole thing that politicians everywhere, not just in Ghana, in election time, they want to do things to win elections, and they would spend and so on. But there are restrictions. I think New Zealand, I think the UK,
the NPP
I think
intends
Austria.
to pass one.
Well, which constrains you from spending or initiating new projects and so on, so that it brings greater sanity and efficiency and protects the public purse too. So I think these mistakes should be taken as lessons, and where we need to strengthen the rules and regulations for conduct in office. I mean, for me, that is where I'll put it. Now, the last thing, this review of contracts and so on and so forth, it's almost
contracts within a certain period.
A certain
14
period,
days,
yes. It all falls within that. I mean, 14 days to your exit from office. People can question the motive, okay, and the goodwill, simply because, especially if you've been voted out of office, it's a painful thing, and I'm not sure it would be the best time to make the very best decision for the electorate that probably had been ungrateful and so on. I think we ought to take into account all this and begin to look at the transition law again and impose constraints, restrictions, and so on, so that we avoid, because it consumes inordinate amount of energy when we have to talk about missing vehicles, and it just poisons the atmosphere.
Right.
For I'm just
away.
looking at Honorable Ayariga and Mike initially their comment, and then when they got to these vehicles, you could also see how it, the argument developed. So we must do the right things for us to govern our country well.
So Doc straight away is talking about the solutions to stop the recurrence. What do you have to say about the auditing and the vehicles matters?
Yes, missing, the saga of missing vehicles.
Yes.
Listen, and I'm surprised Ayariga had forgotten that this is not the first time. See, this is 19th May 2009. Headline, missing 757
cars.
to be probed.
That's why I said there is lie in the morning. You have to lie in the afternoon to cover it.
So when did the lie start? That's what they've been doing. Look, listen, I want the transition team report, at least for now, relative to the vehicles thing published. What is in that report? After all, it is not a classified document, am I? Right? Let them publish
A lot of it is classified, actually.
Wow.
Yes, a lot of the transition. They deal with a whole lot of information.
No, I'm talking of the vehicle. The vehicles.
Okay.
The area to deal with the vehicles. That's it. But relative to the vehicles.
Portions of it were leaked.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they were not the updated portions.
That's it. But that is why we need sunshine. They should publish that whole at least I'm asking for that, because that's the discussion we are having. Otherwise, I would ask for the entirety of the report. I don't see why any part of it should be classified, perhaps unless it's the national security aspects. But whatever it is, let's get the full report on the vehicles thing. Now, Ayariga has been a bit, he's been fair, and honest. Some of the vehicles were sold to the outgoing functionaries of government.
He says that was agreed at the
it's part of why I'm asking. I've had two, but the others were saying no. That's why you published the report. And then also a list of the beneficiaries. It's about, we're talking here about 200 and something vehicles. My own NDC source gave me a figure of 271 vehicles sold. But this is unofficial. So we need a list. And this will not be the first time. In 2001, when it was, Kufuor them published the list. I have it here. 2009, Ayariga them also published the list.
2001 was terrible.
Yes, but there were reasons for that. Okay, in terms of valuation of the vehicles, in terms of the quantity, all those things. Okay, so really it's a bit embarrassing that as a nation, we've not been able to handle these things in a very tidy way. But at least I think we should publish those things. See, Professor Sai wrote a book. It's titled With Heart and Voice. Fred Sai remembers. I'm sure we all know who I'm talking about. And on page 211, all these vehicle things, this is what he said. He had elaborated on a lot of the incidents, valuation, this and that, and then he comes to the point. He says, the lesson I drew from this is that these asset issues should be removed from the office of the Chief of Staff. A Chief of Staff has so many very important things to deal with in the handing over process that the least should be the prices and buying and selling of cars. I think a public office should be available to look after all these assets, audited appropriately yearly and valued yearly, so that when it comes to separation, all concerned would know where this thing stood. In fact, I wonder if we should not try to pay public and civil servants well enough for them to own their own transport and accommodation. He then proceeded to talk about the need for a transition law legal regime, which we have now. But unfortunately,
inadequately.
Thank you. Check the list of vehicles provided by the Administrator General. Check the list of vehicles left by the logistics officer at the presidency. Check the list of vehicles the NDC put out, I think by the Deputy Chief of Staff. Discrepancies. The three. all don't tally.
Just let me interject here.
Yes, please.
To
Yes,
mention that
yes, please.
there's a new the Public Finance Management Act.
Yes.
If you read that, it actually now makes provision for proper documentation of assets of all sectors. So it's in the new public financial management.
Thank you for the
legislation.
information.
But the
But here,
Administrator General should have done this.
Yes.
You don't know why he didn't do it.
No, that one, you see,
wasn't equipped to do
no, but you see, when you create a system for the documentation where he can go and easily pick, it makes work easier.
yeah, but
No,
as
the
we
Public
speak,
Finance
here we
Management
are,
Act came
here
into
we are
force
saddled with a
6 months
situation
to
where we had
election.
discrepancies.
So it's still being
Let's
implemented.
allow people to
No,
finish.
just
I agree.
adding, enriching the
But they are
discussion.
not operationalized
Just
yet, so
enriching
the
the
information is
discussion.
not there.
That the recommendations there have been implemented in this new legislation, which mandates sector agencies to document.
Okay, operationalization
No, it's
appears
now in the act.
it appears to be suffering a deficit in terms
Oh,
of
no, it will be-
operationalization.
I mean, yes.
That's why we are confronted with the
Okay.
challenge in which we are. Now, you
The
see,
auditing of contracts. Or
you remember, my position was clear. I mean, this thing about 14 days, this, I'm not too really enthused about it. 14 days, so what? What was unconstitutional or illegal about it? If it was not in accordance with the public procurement law, or if it needed parliamentary approval and it did not get, yes, take a look at those things and deal with them. Okay? But I'm unable to accept this thing about because it's 14 days, a government should cease functioning. I am unable to do so. And it's been my position all along. That's why President Kufuor was able to execute decisions even a day before handing over. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. Now, as for the question of appointments to Shraj and things, we all know. That's why they are not talking about it. Osafo Marfo is not talking about that. Because he knows that in the face of the Constitution or the law, there was nothing wrong with it. You want to appeal to the person's sentiment or goodwill or good faith, that's not politics. You're talking morality, fine. You're appealing to his good conscience, fine. But you're not talking real politics. That's not what you are talking about. So please, I am clear in my mind. Now we need the full list of those contracts. You see, here we are discussing the matter in the absence of a full list, really. It's a blank zone.
okay.
We are firing blank bullets.
As I suggested to Mike, I hope that it's not going to be a fishing expedition, that they have seen some things and they are trying to just give us an idea that some things have gone wrong. I don't think that they will just embark on a fishing expedition to take a contract and now try to see whether it's right or wrong. I think they have seen some things.
No, it means that the wrong is not the time frame.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
It's not
All
the
right.
time frame.
Okay. All right. So we have very limited time to deal with one last issue, so we can move on. Let's take this interview that Kofi Adams gave to us about the NDC's committee that is going round and the problems that it is encountering as far as evaluating what caused its loss in the 2016 elections is concerned. And the president, to former President Mahama, has also said something. We'll hear all of that right after this.
Indeed, in the year 2001, after the elections, we heard even worse things being said against leadership. I remember people saying our one-time party chairman had money kept under his bed and then he would bring it out to come and dry it from time to time. All this was false. People said people pack things and then, yes, some may still have some party logistics that they are holding that they may not distribute. They keep collecting, they are good at collecting logistics, but they don't send it down. Sometimes you finish elections and you may find even posters of a candidate, t-shirts, caps, and the rest still in people's homes. Such things do happen. Even sometimes it happens even at the national level, that you go to a particular place that is supposed to be keeping things, things will still be there. We agree that, but this alone could not have contributed to our loss. I agree with the young persons or the constituency and branch executive that if they didn't want the regional executive to sit in whilst they speak, it's in order. Because per the arrangement, we don't really expect the region to sit in. The region will have their session with the committee, so that they also present the issues that they have. They may have issues possibly against the national and against some regional or constituency executives also. Somebody who has been in the party for a long time, it is normal with the metropolitan constituencies. They always feel some kind of, in a region within a region. It's always the case. The metropolitan constituencies always behave in all the regions. It's not only in Eastern region. I don't think that we expected the party people who have assembled there just to fold their arms like this. If I saw that scene, I would have been worried as a national organization.